Hi everyone, and welcome back to Anne's Family Recipe. Today I'm showing you how to make a pumpkin spice latte pumpkin pie. Every year on my channel around Thanksgiving and Christmas time, I like to share a new and kind of unique twist on a traditional pie. I've made pecan cream pie, gingerbread pie, my mom's incredible chocolate chip cookie pie. I will link all of these recipes and more for you down in the description box below. So this year I was paging through my Thanksgiving issue of Food Network magazine and I came across the PSL pumpkin pie, or pumpkin spice latte pie, and it piqued my interest. I love coffee flavored desserts, so I thought this would be a nice twist on a traditional Thanksgiving or Christmas pie. If you're new to my channel, don't forget to subscribe and give this video a thumbs up. Now let's get baking. This pie starts with a homemade crust that comes together really easily in a food processor. So first I added in 1 1/4 cups of all-purpose flour and then 1 teaspoon of instant coffee powder. Now I can't drink caffeinated coffee. This recipe calls for instant espresso, but I always just keep the instant decaf powder in my pantry for any recipes that call for that coffee flavor. Next I added in 1 teaspoon of granulated white sugar, a 1/2 teaspoon of apple cider vinegar, and a 1/4 teaspoon of salt. And then I pulse this all together just to incorporate the dry ingredients. Next, I cubed up 1 stick of cold unsalted butter. I added the cubed butter into the dry mixture and I pulsed that just for a few seconds and it broke down into kind of pea-sized crumbs. Then I removed the lid and added in 2 tablespoons of ice water, and then I turned my food processor on, and in less than a minute this dough came together. I shaped my pie dough into a disc and wrapped it in plastic wrap and then put this in the refrigerator for about an hour. Next, I sprinkled a little bit of flour onto my countertop to roll out my dough. And I put a tiny bit of flour onto my rolling pin and onto both sides of my pie dough too. So the recipe said to refrigerate the dough for at least an hour, if not overnight. But to be honest, I thought it was too cold to work with, but I didn't have time to let it warm up a little bit. So I got a little bit frustrated with my dough and I rolled it out as much as I had the patience for, and then that was it. So you're going to see that my pie crust almost, but not quite, fits into my pie dish. Also, I might have a 10-inch glass pie plate, and this recipe does call for a 9-inch, so that might have been part of my issue too. But the crust does shrink a tiny bit as it's baking, so you'll see once it comes out of the oven. I mean, it tastes delicious, and like 3/4 of it looked pretty, but one edge was kind of shrunken into the pan just because I hadn't rolled it out quite thin enough. But in any case, you're rolling this out into a circle big enough to fit into your 9-inch pie plate. This is a little trick I like to do. You just roll it around your rolling pin and then gently unroll it into the pie pan, and it's pretty easy to transfer that way. Then I tucked any excess underneath the perimeter of the crust, and then I just use either a thumb or a pointer finger to just sort of make little indentations around the perimeter. You don't need to do anything fancy to flute your crust. And then this is going to be blind baked, which means you bake it first and then you fill it and bake it again. So I poked the bottom and the sides with a fork, and then I put this into the freezer for an hour. So for the blind baking process, I line the inside of the crust with aluminum foil, and then if you have pie weights, you can put those into the bottom, or you could just use some dried beans. Now what this does is it weighs down the base of the crust so it doesn't puff up too much as it's baking. So this bakes at 350 degrees for about 20 to 25 minutes. Then you remove the foil and the weights and you keep baking for another 10 or 15 more minutes until it's golden brown. Next up, I prepped the pie filling. So this started with 1¼ cups of heavy cream, 1 tablespoon of instant coffee powder, and then I whisked that together. And this pie uses 1 whole can of pure pumpkin puree. So I opened that and added it in, along with 2/3 a cup of granulated white sugar, 2 large eggs, 2 teaspoons of pumpkin pie spice, a 1/2 teaspoon of vanilla extract, plus a little bit extra because the recipe actually called for vanilla bean paste, and I didn't have that, and I think that has a slightly more intensified vanilla flavor. So I added a little extra splash of vanilla extract and then a pinch of salt, and I whisked that all together. Then I just poured the pie filling into the cooled pre-baked crust, and a little bit of it spilled kind of behind the edge of the crust, but it worked out just fine. So then I put this back into the oven. You could put this onto a cookie sheet in case there are any drips, but I could tell mine was low enough that it wouldn't spill over the sides. So this pie continues to bake at 350 for another 50 minutes to an hour. Basically, you want the edges to be firmed up and cooked, but the inside will be ever so slightly jiggly, and I'll kind of show you what that looks like when it comes out of the oven. Lastly, I made the coffee flavored whipped cream, which was a 1/2 cup of heavy cream, 1/4 cup of powdered sugar, 1½ teaspoons of the instant coffee powder, and a 1/2 teaspoon of vanilla extract. And then I used my whisk attachment on my electric hand mixer and whipped this all together until stiff peaks formed. So that took a couple of minutes. I'm not sure if the instant coffee changed the consistency, because usually I can make whipped cream a little bit faster than this came together, but just wait till you try this. Okay, I had to turn the camera around because I just tried this homemade coffee whipped cream and it is amazing. I was a little bit nervous because the ratio of heavy cream to powdered sugar, like there's more sugar than I normally would use, but when you add in the instant coffee, you do need that extra sweetness because this whipped cream is not overly sweet. It tastes like coffee ice cream. This would be something you could use on a bunch of different desserts, not just with this pie. But I'm so excited to see how this all comes together. If this whipped cream is any indicator, it's going to be really, really good. So here's my pie out of the oven. I think it only took about 50 minutes in my oven at 350. And you can see the edges are set, but the center is still a little bit jiggly. And once this cools for a couple of hours, it has an incredible consistency. It's a delicious pumpkin pie recipe. The crust is super flaky and buttery, and the filling is really light and silky. I love it. The coffee flavor wasn't too strong in the pie, but that might just be because I used that instant decaf coffee as opposed to an instant espresso, which might pack a little more punch. But the whipped cream on top just brought it all together, and it was a delicious dessert. Again, don't forget to subscribe to my channel and give this video a thumbs up. Happy Thanksgiving, everybody!